Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to the Curious Realm's continuing coverage of the 2024 MUFON Symposium right here in Irving, Texas. We have the pleasure of speaking right now with Geraldine Stith, whose family is quite literally the witnesses of the Hopkinsville Goblins. So tell us a little bit about this case, because this is one of the very interesting cases that kind of set forth one of the ideas of where we get the concept of, quote, little green men.
Little green men, yep, you're right. Well, it's a great story. People absolutely love it. Of course, it happened to a family that was, innocent. That's the only way you can put it. They were innocent. And they didn't know what was going on. In 1955, Kelly, Kentucky, you look at all of this and you're thinking, wow. And Kelly, Kentucky at the time was only like a population of 50. They were sparse farms. And my grandmother had a farm there, a little 27-acre farm, and she was a widow. So she had 3 young children at the time that were 12, 10, and 7. And my Uncle J.C. and his wife, Eileen, lived with her. And O.P. Baker was Eileen's brother, and every once in a while he would stay the night there. And the weekend that this happened, it just so happened my dad and his wife at the time, Vera, and their friends Billy Ray and June Taylor had come in for the weekend. They were stationed in Evansville at the time. And Evansville was like 2 hours from Kelly. So they wanted to come visit for the weekend and see, his mom and have some good home cooking, and all that Kentucky stuff. So it just so happened this little occurrence happened on Sunday evening. My grandmother had been to church. She was very religious, and they didn't have plumbing. So you had to go out to the well to get the water. So Billy Ray went out to the well to get water, and as he was out there, he heard something. Looked up to the sky to where he heard this, and there was this oval-shaped silver object going across the sky with all the colors of the rainbow flowing behind it. Didn't know what it was, scared him to death. Ran in the house, slammed the door. Everybody looks at him like, what's wrong with you? I saw something. And he kept on. Everybody was trying to tell him, well, maybe it was a shooting star or a meteor shower. And he says, no, it was none of those things. And he kept on. So my dad said, well, take me out here and show me where you saw this. And they went out to the well. He pointed, told him again. My dad tried to reason with him again with the shooting star and all that stuff. No, we knew what all that looked like. He said, well, let's go back in. Finish the rest of our evening, so we got to go back to work tomorrow. And as they were going to the house, from the back behind the house through the woods came this little 3.5-foot tall being with big glowing eyes, a huge round head, big ears, and arms almost touching the ground. And its legs weren't moving. It was floating on top of the ground.
Interesting.
They didn't know what it was. Scared them to death, ran in the house, slammed the door. Of course, everybody in the house thought that Billy Ray done got my dad out there to get him to go along with his little story and scare the girls.
Sure, yeah.
And my grandmother jumped on him and told him, says, listen, y'all got to stop it because I got to get these 3 kids to bed and you're not helping me any.
Yeah.
But, one went to the front door, one went to the back door, one had a shotgun, one had the rifle. So my grandmother knew something was serious.
Yeah.
So she decided to go to Billy Ray and ask Billy Ray. He was at the back door and asked him what was going on. And he told her, he says, Miss Glennie, I don't know what it was, but it was something I hope you never have to see. So they sat there and it was quiet. And lo and behold, finally one of them come around the corner of the house where my grandmother was sitting. She saw it. She screamed. She fell. Everybody heard her in the house. They come running to her and she told them, says, there's something out here. I saw it.
Interesting.
And about that time, a shot rang out in the front of the house, and it was my Uncle J.C. shot one through the window. Billy Ray runs out the front door, and as he's standing there, there's this little stoop over the door, and a hand comes down and tries to grab his hair. Well, my Aunt Eileen grabs him and yanks him in the house. And my dad runs out the front door then, and he turns toward where the hand come from, and there it sat, a little being. He shoots it. It falls, it rolls, it floats away. One of them, they holler, there's one in the maple tree. They had these huge maple trees in the front yard. Sure enough, he turns, right there in the limb, sat one, shoots it, it falls to the ground, rolls, floats away.
Wow.
And they're hitting these things.
Yeah.
Because these are country boys that could shoot.
Yeah.
They can hit.
Yeah.
And by the time it's all said and done, they're shooting one off the back fence. They're keeping them out of the windows and doors. They're trying to keep them out of the house, and they are not dying. That's the problem. They're not dying. They're coming back. Of course, everybody's hysterical.
Yep.
Kids are crying. Women are crying. What are they supposed to do? How are they going to get out of this? My dad tells them, listen, it's going to be fine. We're going to get to Hopkinsville, and we're going to get help. Hopkinsville is 7 miles down the road.
Yep.
Well, he gets them quiet. They're sitting there, and all of a sudden they hear one going over the tin roof.
Oh.
And they hear its little nails, like it was just about doing it on purpose. Well, this really sends everybody to hysterics. The kids are crying again. What is he supposed to do? How are they going to get out of this mess? And he tells them, he says, listen, we're going to get to Hopkinsville. Just calm down. Just wait. So they sit there a while longer. Gets quiet again. He says, let's go. They hit the trucks and head to Hopkinsville, looking behind them the whole way. Get to Hopkinsville, run into the police station. Of course, this is 1955. One little officer on duty.
Yeah.
You've got people from the ages 7 to 50, 11 of them running in there in the middle of the night trying to tell a story, and he's trying to understand what's going on. And he says, you're trying to tell me little men are trying to attack your farmhouse? And my dad's telling him, you don't understand what's happening here.
Yeah.
He says, listen, I'll get you some help. Hold on. So he calls the chief. He calls Chief Russell Greenwell, tells him what's going on. The chief says, calm them down. I'm a-coming. So him and his wife jump in the car, get there, and he tells the officer on duty, he says, call Fort Campbell Army Base, which Fort Campbell was 10 miles down the road from Hopkinsville. Call Fort Campbell, call the paper, call whoever you can. We're going to Kelly. So by the time it's all said and done, you got a caravan of cars going out to Kelly in the middle of the night. They get out there. Of course, it's pitch black dark. There's no lights or stuff like that back in 1955 out in the country.
Yeah.
They pull up and they can tell. It feels funny. It's eerie feeling. Clear evidence something happened because there's shotgun and rifle shells all over the ground.
Sure.
There's shotgun and rifle shells all in the house. Woodwork is shot up. Screens are shot through.
Wow.
What happened here?
Yeah.
But no bodies, no blood, no feathers, no fur, nothing that showed that they
there was anything there.
You know, so he goes up to my grandmother and he tells her, he says, Miss Glennie, I am so sorry, but there's nothing here. We can't do anything.
Yeah. Yeah, there's other than shells on the ground and some broken stuff, there's nothing for us to
everything.
investigate.
They searched everywhere they could and they couldn't find anything. And so they all leave and left my grandmother and all of them there to fend for themselves the rest of the night. Well, she gets the kids in bed finally. She lays down in her bed. My dad sits by her in a rocking chair with a shotgun. And they're exhausted. And she looks toward the window, and there one stands again. And she's thinking, well, I'm just tired. So she closes her eyes again. The second time she looks, it's still standing there. Third time she looks, she yells at my dad and says they're back. They get up and they start the battle again.
Oh, man.
And this goes on till daylight. And the only reason they think that they left at daylight was because the sun come up and those big eyes couldn't take the sun. That's the only thing they could rationalize, reason with, that they left.
Interesting. And did they ever return?
Not that we know of. But I like to tell people that even if they had nobody would have said anything because after this, my family was ridiculed so bad.
I was going to say, I mean, my family comes from Mamou, Louisiana. Very tiny little red light town. My cousin graduated with about 60 other kids in high school. So when you're talking a town like that, you're literally talking Mayberry RFD, man.
Yes.
Like the operator in town knows everybody's business.
Yes.
The banker in town, that is where it's like you want to know the town business.
Yeah.
Go to the barber shop.
Right. And this was a community of, like I said, maybe 50.
Yeah.
And farms.
Everybody. I remember the first Sunday I went to church in that town. I heard a kid behind me like, "Who's that guy?" You know, like that's what kind of town it is. And when you're talking 50 people, it's either going to go one of two ways. You're going to find very little middle ground of support in that area. And how supportive was the community toward your family with this incident?
Well, as far as people in Kelly, they believed wholeheartedly because others heard and seen things during the day that day.
Oh, really?
And at night. Yeah, no, they did not come forward till later because everybody was seeing how my family was getting treated over this.
Sure.
But it was later people were coming forward and saying, yeah, we heard and seen things that night. And, you know, even the farmer in the back that lived in the back behind my grandmother's land, he was going to come help them because he heard the commotion and he thought something was wrong.
Yeah, he's hearing gunshots on the neighboring property.
Well, he started hearing them carrying on at first. He was that close, and he was getting ready to go. He put his boots on, grabbed a flashlight. He was getting ready to go. And then the gunshots started, and he didn't because he's afraid he'd get shot.
Yeah. I mean, you're rolling up in the dark.
Yeah. And, you know, and my dad set the family down the next morning and told them, we're going to forget this ever happened. Don't even talk about it because I heard them last night. They were making fun of us. And that's the last thing my daddy wanted was to be made fun of.
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, you want to be taken properly in the town that you live in.
Yes, because he was a serious person in the first place, and his word was his word. And people not believing them, it hurt him to his soul.
Oh, I'll bet. And
because something happened.
Well, let's explore real quick because this is obviously a story that you grew up with. Was it something that was widely talked about in your family?
No, my parents kept this from us.
And that's interesting, Geraldine, because that is something that we discuss regularly on this show, especially with people like Les Velez from Opus, people like Kathleen Martin, Earl Gray from the Experiencer Resource Team. The idea that experiences like this drive families apart. They drive husbands and wives apart. They drive best friends apart. And it's normally because nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about it. You know, and it's no different a violation than a personal violation of your body. Frequently it is a personal violation of your body.
Right.
When you're abducted, things like that. I mean, even the fact of the creatures reaching down, touching your uncle, trying to come into your home, that's an invasive process that imparts PTSD on people.
Well, yeah, my Uncle JC was a Korean War vet.
Oh.
And this affected him more than that did.
Wow.
After this happened, he was unable to keep a job. His life just went into tatters, and it was just a mess.
Well, because once again, it's something that if you talk about it, people ridicule you because of your experience and call you crazy. So now you can't even trust your own mind. It's either that or you don't talk about it, and it's buried, and you can't trust your own mind.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's like, did I even experience that?
Yeah, but you had 11 people experience it and saw these little beings. So, you know, you had 11 minds that were, you know, it's not like it was a couple of people seeing this. This is 11 people. 3 of them were children. And it was a terrifying experience. And people in Kelly that lived around there were terrified. Like I said, you know, they didn't know whether they were going to come back. What were they there for in the first place?
And was your mother one of these children? Or
No. My mother, she lived in Kelly at the time with her first husband. And they actually had 7 kids. So they lived over, she said, in the valley. And they were terrified.
Wow.
Terrified.
Wow. Yeah. And once again, something that after many years, the community came out and said that numerous people had these experiences. Is it now something that is more widely talked about in town, more accepted?
It is more accepted now. It wasn't because back in 2011, we started a Kelly Festival.
Okay. And
at first it was like, oh my gosh, you know, you could tell people didn't like it. You could tell.
Yeah.
But over the years, it finally got there. And COVID hit, and then it knocked it out, and we're not having it anymore. But I did get good news the other day. They're starting to kick off next month. Hopkinsville is going to try to get it started back up again.
Good.
It's going to be in Hopkinsville instead of Kelly.
And, you know, that's something that we speak about pretty regularly on the show. We do a lot of live on-site things like this at festivals. And one of them that we go to is the Falk Monster Festival in Falk, Arkansas. And it's interesting when you get into small rural communities because it's an all or nothing situation. There's very little middle ground about how they treat these stories and encounters. They either want to protect them as a town and onlookers, please go away, looky-loos, like, please, we enough. And even in Falk, there's a contingent of people in the town that are like, enough with the story, enough with the people coming and taking pictures, things like that. And then there's another group that fully embraces it and is like, no, this is a unique part of our town history. And if we don't preserve this, it may very well disappear. Not even for the fact of a festival or anything like that, but the fact of it's an oral tradition of the area now.
Right.
You know, it's become an embedded part of the oral tradition.
Well, that's what has happened here because Kelly, like I said, it died when COVID hit. I think they were glad because they actually had built a UFO and set out in the park there at Kelly.
Oh, wow.
And as soon as they found out that this is no more, they had that sucker tore down and it was gone.
Yeah.
So Kelly is fine with it being gone. But Hopkinsville, they see it as a part of history.
Yeah.
They're wanting to keep it. So this is why they're trying to start it back up again. You know, maybe Kelly don't want nothing to do with it. That's fine. We'll put it in Hopkinsville.
Well, and that's just it. You know, it's hard. It's hard for a town to fully embrace that. It can be really tough, especially when you're talking small Christian towns, things like that. It can be interpreted in a lot of ways, and once again, a lot of old timers just do not want the attention of strangers.
That's
and
the problem with Kelly.
That
was the problem with Kelly because it is very religious oriented, and a lot of people that were involved in that festival were really religious people. So it was kind of hard.
Yeah.
To do the things we wanted to do because they wanted to, how can I put this, Christianify it, I guess.
Sure.
You know, and had a gospel singing and all that stuff, and that don't go with aliens.
You know,
and so it was kind of hard. So I am so glad Hopkinsville is going to take it over because they're going to do it right.
Sure.
They're going to do it right.
Sure. And you know, the story is definitely one of those amongst encounters in the United States that is a preeminent story because once again, it's not like there were 2 or 3 witnesses that were separated. This was a family of 11 people in one location that all experienced this. And then years later, an entire community of people that came out and said, no, I heard things in my back lot that night. I saw things in the sky, things like that. So it's pretty fascinating to see once again, how a story like this over the years evolves and becomes larger. And you come to find out, you know, much like MUFON says regularly, we don't care if you saw an object in 1992, make a report. Make a report because it may well be the case that there were 8 other people that saw that object in 1992 at that point. So your information, even 20 years later, can help corroborate the experience of other people, you know, and even 30, 40 years down the road, it can make a difference, even as a sigh of relief to the other experiencers that experienced something that night. You know, the Pascagoula UFO is a great example of that, where many years later, numerous people came out and said, yes, I saw something that night, and it gave relief to Clive and the other, that they weren't the only ones.
Exactly.
Because I think that's an experience that so many people that witness and experience, especially in the rite that they did there in Kelly, Kentucky, that it's an up-close, personal, very traumatic experience. You know, it helps. To find out later that you're not alone.
Yeah, and people are, you know, they don't talk about this stuff. They're afraid to.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be labeled crazy or on drugs or something.
Yeah,
you know?
Well,
and they are. They're afraid, you know.
And, yeah.
And a lot of people have come forward and told me their stories and stuff. And so it's interesting. I mean, you'd be surprised at the people that have had some really weird things happened to them, over the years, but they're just afraid to talk about it.
Yeah, and well, let's get back to the visitation. Were there any other instances of visitation after this? Was that the only isolated incident?
As far as we know.
Wow.
That was it.
Yeah, that is remarkable to know that something like that, because it wasn't like a typical sighting, or even the fact of like we were like Betty and Barney Hill. We were abducted. We had numerous hours of missing time. We have to go through a regression to find out what happened during that time. This was a real time over numerous hours experience.
And the thing is, after the fact, people came forward, and even police officers. There were several police officers. Actually, the desk sergeant that was on duty that night had seen stuff 3 times.
Yeah.
Chief Russell Greenwell, he had an experience a couple of years before this incident.
That is something.
And so that's why they clung to it and had always believed them. And in fact, that night that it happened, like I said, after the fact, people were coming forward and talking about it, and there had been lights seen all the way across several counties.
Yeah.
Starting with Clarksville, Tennessee, it hit Fort Campbell, it hit Hopkinsville, landed in Kelly. Now, what were they doing? People were seeing this.
Yeah.
And the only thing that we can figure is, and a lot of people don't know this, but Fort Campbell Army Base was having a nuclear arsenal on base at the time. So did they miss Fort Campbell, and hop over a couple of counties and accidentally get caught in Kelly? I feel sorry for them in a way because they stopped at the wrong place. You know?
Well, and once again, the experience happening over numerous hours is what's so remarkable. The fact that this wasn't like spotty. It wasn't, we saw something, then the next night something else happened, things like that. This was a continuous event.
Yes.
And that is absolutely remarkable. Now, years down the line, were there any ill effects? I mean, other than, of course, trauma to the experience.
Trauma.
Were there any ill effects medically, things like that?
Well, not that I know of. Of course, all my uncles are dead now. My dad passed away. All of them, I think, from cancer, but I don't think that had anything to do with that. But I don't know for sure. Of course, the 3 younger kids are still alive.
Okay.
My Uncle Lonnie, he's 80 now.
Wow.
Mary, who was 7 at the time, she's in her 60s. But they don't talk about it. Now, my Uncle Lonnie used to. He used to talk about it because he's seen it, he saw it. He saw the being. He looked through the window because my dad was trying to protect everybody. And he didn't want the kids, seeing this thing. And he did. He looked out the window, and there was one right there.
Wow.
And he used to talk about it, but he won't talk about it no more. And I think it's because of his mind. He's 80 years old. I think he's afraid to because he might forget something and he don't want it to be wrong.
Yeah.
Because they were very adamant about this story. I mean, it never changed. It stayed the same. They were all taken, in a room and asked to describe the little creatures, and they all described it almost to the T.
Wow.
There's drawings of them.
Yep.
And it never changed.
Yeah.
So
well, and that's just it. Once again, somebody who is, especially in small towns, you get very concerned about reputation. You get very concerned about being the man of your word that you are, and being taken at your word fully and rightly. So for him not to want to share things for fear of not getting things correct because of his mental capacity, I could utterly see that. Because he wouldn't want to corrupt his story. He wouldn't want to make it seem like he was disingenuous then because of something now.
Right.
Even the fact of the rest of the family still to this day not really talking about it. Like that
it's traumatizing.
It's exactly one of the things that we bring up regularly, that these events are something that change who you are and how you are so intrinsically. That even people who experience them together don't know how to cross that bridge of conversation.
Well, I'll give you a good example. The Kelly Festival, we used to have it every year, like I said, and I would have to get up and talk.
Yeah.
Well, they would schedule it out, so you knew the schedule. Well,
Sure.
I had noticed that my 2 uncles and aunts would never come when I would talk.
Mm.
Well, I found out why. One year they kind of scooted me in on an extra one, and my Aunt Mary was there, and she didn't know I was going to be talking. Well, she stayed, and she was out in the audience. And when I was done, she come up to me, and she was as white as a ghost. And she told me, she
Wow.
said it brought it all back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, she was 7. She's a little bitty thing
Oh, man.
today.
Oh,
so
man.
these things were probably bigger than she was.
Yeah. 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 That
And
would have been.
so it was terrifying. I could see why she blocked it out.
Yeah.
And plus, my dad set them down and told them, forget it. This didn't happen.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so
No. Exactly. And that's just it. These traumatizing things that happen in life. It's hard to pack them away, and it's hard to unpack them.
I can't imagine.
It leaves an experiencer in a very, very hard spot where you don't know who to go to, and you don't know how to broach it.
Exactly.
You know?
And, my dad wouldn't talk about it. People would contact
Yeah.
him all the time wanting to, and he didn't want to bring it back up.
Yeah.
It scared him to death. You
bet.
could tell it did.
I'll bet. Wow. Well, Geraldine, thank you so much for taking the
Well,
time
thank you
coming
for
on,
having
talking about this.
me.
Because once again, the Hopkinsville Goblins is one of the preeminent cases of direct contact with
Yes.
with possible beings from another place. Let everybody know where they can go to find more about you, where they can go to follow you, everything else right there in the camera, Geraldine.
Well, I don't have a website anymore. I kind of
Okay.
cut it out, but I have an Etsy shop where you can go on that, and it's called Aliens and Goblins, all lowercase. And you can always go on there and contact me there. Of course, I have an email, gstith@hotmail.com. You can contact me there. And I'm easy to find, really. Just
I found you
Google
on
me.
social media.
Just Google me, you'll find me. And I'm always glad to talk to people and help them out, or, whatever. I get contacted all the time by people who have stories and, I want to talk about them and experiences and stuff. And I guess it just makes them feel good to get it off their chest and be
That's
able to
right.
talk to somebody
That's-
that won't make fun of them.
Yeah, that hears them with open heart and open mind.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what this show is about, because without that, we cannot have a conversation,
Exactly.
Geraldine. And
Very good.
That's how the world moves forward, is with conversation.
Very good,
So
yes.
Thank you so much for your
Thank
time during
you.
this
I
very busy
appreciate it.
symposium. While you are online finding Geraldine and looking up everything about the Hopkinsville Goblins, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. Curious Realm is where you can find all of our interviews from live episodes or from live events. That's where you can find your copy of the all-new field observation and encounter log. Make sure to stay tuned, everybody. Right after these commercial breaks, we'll be right back with more of our continuing coverage of the MUFON Symposium 2024 right here in Irving, Texas. Right after this.
The key to good science is good research. At the heart of good research is a good data set. With the field observation and encounter log from Curious Research, you can easily keep track of your investigative information all in one place, making it easier to review cases and readily see comparisons and contrasts between them. Whether out in the woods squatching, in a back room gathering EVPs, or using high-tech gear to track UFO, UAP activity, this easy-to-carry, pocket-sized scientific data log is the perfect companion for any field researcher. You can find your copy of the Curious Research Field Observation and Encounter Log at Amazon.com, or visit the official Curious Realm store at curiousrealm.com/store. to reserve your copy for yourself, your family, or a mind that you want to open. That website again is curiousrealm.com/store.